What is up, everybody? I have a special guest on today's episode on these Pick Your Brain sessions. Since having two kids, I don't have a lot of time to meet out for coffee or lunch or anything like that to help people. So I figured, why not just help one person, but also help multiple people in the process here. So we post this content on our YouTube. So if you do have any questions or anything like that, definitely post them in the comments below and we'll hop on a one-on-one just like this. I'm an open book. This is an incredibly hard business, so I think that any type of insights I can do to ease your journey, of course. But Gagan, thanks for coming on and share and putting yourself out there. I appreciate it, man. Not everybody is comfortable doing this.
I appreciate you. Thanks for spending time with me, Matt.
Okay, so let's start this off with just like tell me about your background, kind of like, ask this question on my podcast and my guests, like you were born, now you're here, what happened in between?
Gosh, it's kind of gone by in a blink of an eye, as they say, right? So I was born in Nepal, fresh off the boat. I'm sure you can tell from my accent. But my sister, my dad, my mom, we all lived together here in Rochester, New York. Um, I went to college to be a doctor like every other brown boy, but I decided that that wasn't the best route for me. I just enjoyed building things too much as it is. So I was looking at some avenues, I was looking at some high ticket sales, and then a buddy of mine just mentioned, hey, like, why don't you get into real estate?
Hmm.
This was, I think, 3 years ago, give or take. Got into real estate when I was 19. Um, focus on that. Transitioned a little bit more into an ISA model, sort of developing lead generation systems and AI and things of that nature. And I was in Denver for a little while. My mom got sick, so I'm back in Rochester taking care of the family. And now we're thinking to ourselves, one of the biggest things that we need, especially as inflation still rises, is probably some sort of assets.
Hmm.
So I'm looking to get into the investment portfolio side of things as it is.
Yeah, so tell me where you're at in your journey on that.
Now, I am nowhere. I'm
Awesome.
as newborn as they get. I think I understand, financial models. I think I understand underwriting to the smallest degree that I can like talk about it with some kind of, banter. But to say I put it into practice, which I think is the most difficult part as it is, it's
Hmm.
just I don't have that. I haven't purchased anything yet. I've unwritten deals for people, for my clients to see if this is a good fit for them. But I think the emotional baggage that comes with purchasing your own investment property, that's something I haven't experienced yet.
Yeah, so how have you educated yourself so far? Have you been like doing like YouTube University, going to meetups, like listening to podcasts? Like, tell me about that.
Yeah. So I'm super privileged and super lucky to be a part of Real Broker,
Hmm.
which has a universal education model. It's a cloud-based brokerage in which people from Washington, Texas, everyone gets to teach, right? So I'm learning from individuals that have over 500, 1,000, 2,000 units as it is there.
Hmm.
I'm also in paid masterminds to sort of, jumpstart my progress with investments.
Hmm.
So I'm learning about subject two right now, the BRR method, just outright buying something. So I think a lot of what I'm learning is from individuals that I'm just paying money for or from my brokerage.
So before we go into sort of my methodology in terms of breaking this out and charting the way forward for you, what questions do you have on your heart and mind that you had that you wanted to answer before coming into this brain picking session here?
My God, an hour isn't enough time for that, Matt. I'll be honest with you. I just think I think one of the most difficult things for me is I love just building things as it is. Like I've loved building Legos since I was a kid, right? So with building a business, with building some kind of system and operation, one of the key things that my mentor mentions is, hey, you need a singularity of focus.
Mhm.
But where am I going to find a singularity of focus when I haven't done any of those things to figure out what I want to do, figure out where I'm good at, figure out any of those things, right? So I think developing really a strategic process that is based around what I'm looking for, which I don't know about,
Mhm.
right? So I don't even know what I'm looking for. Yeah, I just know I want to get into investments. And I think that is my like underlying question is what should I be looking for? What should I not be looking for? How do I make sure that I am looking for the right thing? And how do I develop a system around it to make it so that I can eventually hire out for a large portion of those activities?
Mhm. Okay, so before we got on this call, you had mentioned that you may be relocating, possibly. Is that still the case?
I'm like, they're not gonna want to hear this. They're over there somewhere. We got some we're getting some work done here at this house. It's like there's a reason that we're getting work done, right? I'm like 95% sure that we're relocating. So I think with just a larger populace of our people, like our community, our culture being where they're at in Ohio, and
Mhm.
also just looking at the data, seeing that there's a massive investment opportunity there as it is.
Mhm.
I can see it both juxtaposed from a financial standpoint and an emotional standpoint to make that move over there. So I'm like, I don't want to be 100% sure because I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
I'm like 95% sure we're going to be there next year.
Okay. Fair enough. So here's the thing. All right. So if you're potentially closing a chapter and opening up a new chapter in terms of a new location, then I would say that that changes things big time because the best way to sort of boil this down into, I guess, boil this down into like, sort of actionable steps in terms of how to start educating yourself is like the best way to actually distill this thing is
Yeah.
figuring out location,
All right.
right? In your mind's eye, like what does your first investment property purchase look like?
Yeah.
Is it a single family? Is it a 2 through 4 unit multifamily? Is it a 500 unit apartment community? Like, tell me about that.
I very much so believe, and this is probably the complete wrong way of looking at life. But there's a really good book. It says ready, fire, aim. And
Hmm.
I think that's kind of like how I've lived my business career, my life so far. So my biggest thing, this is such a stupid idea, but I'm looking to go as big as I can with some kind of syndication.
Hmm.
Like I don't think I have any issues with communication. I think being able to articulate my value and the vision that I have and generating income for it and getting some kind of financial, backing, it's not going to be a problem. It's just going to be to find a 500 unit multiplex wherever I go. So that's my biggest challenge. If that doesn't work out, then I would like to buy maybe a 1 to 4 unit with an FHA.
Okay, got it. All right. So the reason why I asked this, and I'm always like, go bigger sooner. That's the name of my company.
Yeah,
It's my consulting services. So I'm always a fan of that, but also there's a reason why, in terms of my consulting business, that I do not work with investors that haven't done the deal before. Right?
yeah,
If it's not just a single family or a two family, one of the things that it took me 11 years to build up the courage to buy my first larger commercial deal. And the reason why it took me so long was because of kind of like a lack of courage and also this sort of I don't know, it was kind of like a circular nonsensical reference that I had to be big to go big.
yeah,
So you do not have to wait for as long as I did and accumulate because how do I have enough experience? I have to have a certain amount of units to have the universe give me permission to go bigger. All these sort of like self-limiting beliefs that were in it. And then and I was readier sooner than, probably I could have gone bigger after my first like one or two deals, right?
yeah,
And also, if I had somebody on my team that has gone through that journey in terms of scaling up and raising capital and how to find deals and how to underwrite those deals, how to put the whole, like, all the puzzle pieces together in terms of the whole capital stack from an equity and debt standpoint, how to get the most attractive, advantageous financing in the property. Um, the capital raising part of things is where it really, there's this whole really, really dangerous statement out there that you hear is that find the deal and the money will come. And we don't go to the grocery store and be like, okay, well, I'm going to find the groceries and then I'm going to get the money, right? It's like, no, you get the money first and then
yeah,
you find the groceries. And I think where a lot of people misinterpret that is that you build the relationships, like you're raising capital without actually having an opportunity, which is the most beautiful part of this, like my whole methodology and
yeah,
process is that all you're doing is you're increasing the size of your network, deepening that network, and also kind of changing your identity in terms of like being an access point to the one thing that 99% of people want will never have, which is income producing real estate
yeah,
or just exposure to it. So coming for you are right now, and I don't want to disappoint you by what I'm going to say, but it's just my general guidance is that okay, your first deal.
Yeah.
your first investment property deal is going to be like your proving grounds and also your biggest marketing vehicle for building credibility. And what I would do is I know you're active on social media. I would starting from day one, right? When you know like, okay, this is what I'm going to do, announce it to the world. Hey, this year, within 12 months, I'm buying my first like investment property. This is what I'm looking for. And also here to document the entire experience, my
Yeah.
entire journey for you. What this does is it starts to indoctrinate your sphere of influence in terms of Gagan being not just a real estate broker, but also a real estate investor as
Yeah.
well, kind of going through this journey. And there's so many people that miss out on this opportunity. Like some of the biggest, and like I'm I don't mean to use the word influencer or something like that, but like, some of the biggest influencers in real estate that you see on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube and that sort of thing have been those very specific stories, right?
Yeah.
Antonio Cuciniello, who's a guest on my podcast, like he basically started his whole documentation from like, hey, I decided to do this. All right, and then every step going through there, right? Like I looked at I looked at 5 properties this week. I identified one that looks like it's going to worth taking a look at. These are the reasons why the other 4 properties didn't work. We looked at the Google we looked at Google Maps and this is it's like it's in a war zone or something like that. And so Antonio Cuciniello, Brett McManus, who's local, him and his wife bought a boutique motel in Killington, Vermont, for instance, and documented that whole thing, and
Yeah.
has been able to like actually use that as a really, really great vehicle for raising capital for their future boutique motel and hotel acquisitions and that sort of
Yeah.
thing. So you can kind of see this as like, okay, if I'm going to move, I'm going to need some place to live. If you're using the FHE vehicle for that. And so, why not like document that process and be like very public and transparent about it, like the
Yeah.
good, the bad, the ugly, and all that sort of thing. So, that being said, I probably would not look at, I there's a lot of work you can do in terms of just like educating yourself on a market. But I probably would not buy a property that's that small in a market that you're not going to live. Um, but I mean, I could be wrong because this kind of goes counter to my other mantra, which is the DDD is do a deal, damn it. Because there's so many people that get stuck in their head about like,
Yeah.
well, do I do single family? Do I do multifamily? Do I do the STR? Do I do MTR? Do I do LTR? Do I purchase the property in an LLC name or in my own personal name? And like the one thing is like my whole objective with the people that I'm talking to, just like you, is number one objective is become part of the 1%.
Yeah.
The 1% of the people that own income generating real estate. So what do I need to do to do that? There's going to be mistakes you're going to make as a process. Some of them are going to be more painful than others, but you know, knowledge without mileage is bullshit. So you actually have to go through and accumulating, getting the mileage on in order to do that, right? So, but like I would probably use that if you found a smoking hot deal in Rochester and you're like, hey, I can buy this and maybe I'll move, maybe I'm not in like 12 to 24 months, then that's fine. Just do it.
Yeah.
You'll figure it out, right? And then, maybe you sell that property, maybe you hold on to it. You won't be able to use an FHA again unless you sell that property,
Right.
but you can do that, right? At least be equipped for it. So that being said, and we can talk about locations in a minute. Financing wise, how long have you been a 1099 independent contractor as a real estate agent?
Just about 2 years. Yeah, just about 2 years.
Okay. And how do your tax returns look from an actual like income standpoint in terms of how that would affect your bankability with buying a
Yeah.
property? And the reason why I asked that is because I thought I was really smart and cute by like, over reporting expenses that were personal expenses
Yeah.
that as business expenses, and I ended up shooting myself in the foot from my ability to get financing in a property, especially FHA and that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
tell me about
So I'm gonna try to put this as politically correct as I possibly can. I don't want the
that.
IRS to watch this, but I have a higher yield of capital as it is right now in my
Mhm.
bank account than I probably should.
Hmm.
According to my taxes and according to how much money I made
Hmm.
last year. I have a few different business standpoints as it is. I have a lead generation company, I have a consulting company, and then I
Hmm.
have active real estate selling. My model of selling is a little bit different than most agents. I guess I'm just like sort of backtracking here. When I realized the average home prices here is like 100,000, 150,000. So with that, that's maybe 3,000, 6,000 commission versus
Hmm.
marketing in some place like Orange County or Portland, Oregon or Washington, having someone on retainer for whatever number they're willing to pay me and then get a 30, 35% cut of that.
Hmm.
I can then invest more time into lead generation. You know what I mean? So my business model is a little bit different, and I have different cues of how I'm making money as it is.
Hmm.
I have enough in my bank account to buy an investment property to put money down into it to
Hmm.
build, repairs, things of that nature, like minor things here and there. If I were to get into that syndication, which I'm not going to now because, just from this conversation, I
Hmm.
would need a loan. I would need a pretty massive, substantial size loans. So I think I can comfortably purchase one if, hypothetically speaking, it required 20% down, maybe 20,000 or 30,000. I can comfortably purchase that.
Hmm.
If it needed something a little bit more, like 70, 80, 90, or even higher than that, then
Hmm.
I would have to start getting some conversations with other people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, that's good to know. So yeah, so like 20 to $30,000, like if it was an FHA, and let's just assume that's like, we're gonna take five, like let's do the
Let's
lower
just do
amount,
20,000,
you know,
just to be on the more comfortable side.
so I mean, so if you're doing FHA 5% down, I mean that could get you up to a $400,000 property, right? Um, conservatively speaking. So like let's
Yeah.
say between 300 to 400,000. That's the one thing is that have you talked to any mortgage banks about like, okay, here's my tax returns. What can I get with this?
Yeah, so I've it's so funny because my loan officer partner was like, dude, you really screwed yourself hard with your tax returns.
Uh-huh.
So we did look at the numbers. And I can oh gosh, I can get a loan for around 250, three
Hmm.
hundred, give or take.
Okay.
Um, Probably on the lower end though. I spoke with him and he said the numbers are just like a little smudged as it is. So if we want to be comfortable, if we want to have something that's a surefire, we're looking at 225, 250.
Okay. That's a healthy budget. That's a healthy budget, Gagan. So I think that that's enough to work with. I think that maybe a couple different strategies here too is if you found something that needed work, but you could buy it under market value at a discount. I mean, you can also get private financing
Yeah.
through a private money lender or a hard money lender. There are some companies that lend out money that's not so hard. Okay, so typically you'll like when you're doing research on this, a hard money lender is going to be like, 12% interest in 2 points or 3 points at closing paid to
Yeah.
them. But there's institutional lenders, like let's say there's Quickline Capital that's out of Syracuse they're not as hard as that, right? And they have terms that are typically, sometimes more than a year. So you can buy something, they're looking more at the asset and the appraisal rather than you as the borrower. So if you had this sort of like stretch property that was like, damn, I can buy this thing for $200,000, it'd be worth $400,000 all day long. It needs $50,000 worth of work put into it. So
Yeah.
like let's say a total $250,000 basis, you can borrow money like that from, a company like Quickline Capital or there's a lot of them throughout the United States.
Yeah.
So I'm just referencing that one because we partnered with them before for they were a sponsor for our chapter at Freedom First Realty Investors Association. And so what you can do is you're like, okay, well, I got this property to be worth $400,000 at the end of the day. And I'm gonna basically I can refinance that thing on a conventional mortgage, even with your LLC, with a community bank after you're done rehabbing it and then leasing up like let's say if it's a three family or four family property.
Yeah.
And then you can refinance that, take the hard money out, put permanent bank financing on the property, and then right out into the sunset, right? That's the Burr method in a nutshell.
That's the goal right there.
So you got kind of two different avenues, right? So and the good thing about establishing a relationship with a hard money lender is that you can go in with you can go in as like a cash buyer too. with with that type of product instead of
Yeah.
it being because one of the things, you're an agent, you know how much it hamstrings you when you have an FHA financing contingency on it, because I mean, it's still like people redline out FHA buyers in this market, right? And I want to also look in terms of like your total asset pantry of like, you're in lead gen, so why not like transmute that skill into finding off market multifamily properties that are less than they're less than 4 units, and put together a marketing strategy to find those types of opportunities,
Yeah,
right?
that's for if anyone watches this, I'm basically giving away my lead generation method at this point. So
Do
like,
it, man. Just give it
pay
all
me.
away.
Yeah.
Sell the implementation.
So that's exactly what we're doing. Is we I could show some things too. I'd love to show it, but essentially what we're doing is, well, I thought about this. I had my assistant switch up the model of lead generation. Now we barely target buyers. We have some buyers advertisements running. When I came back to Rochester, I realized this market here is very slow.
Hmm.
No one's doing webinars. No one's doing, you know, ads through Facebook. No one's doing YouTube advertisements. None of those things. So essentially, what we're doing is targeting a method in which it's asset first and then agent second, meaning
Hmm.
that we're targeting sellers, but I'm looking at the deal first. And this isn't completed yet. It's just a vision.
Yeah.
I'm still talking to my coaches. We're still trying to figure out the strategy, what we're
Hmm.
trying to do.
Hmm.
But in essence, what we're attempting to do is target sellers. First and foremost would be my investments because I'm putting the money, I'm doing all those, right? Looking
Hmm.
at it from an asset standpoint. And if it doesn't work out in the buy box that I have, then we list it.
Hmm.
So that's kind of what we're switching to now. And with the NAR lawsuit and everything as it is, I figured number one, that hits both things, right? I get more listings and I get to buy houses for myself.
Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. And also the focus is also on like, yeah, I know you talked about you're probably more of a systems guy than I am, but also I think that you might have to like temper that in thinking like, okay, I don't need to actually build a system to buy one deal,
Yeah.
right? But if I'm going to buy one deal, it'll be easy for me to like bolt on some tweaks to that sort of lead acquisition strategy because I'm already
Yeah.
doing this anyways, then you might as might as well, and you can actually create an additional business model out of it, right?
Yeah.
Keep what you like, and then refer out or list to the rest of them.
Yeah.
Um, so generally speaking, what I'm gonna be looking at in terms of like location for targets is desirable areas. I want to
Yeah.
live in areas. I want to live in multifamily areas where I would want to live myself.
Right.
Your If you're targeting Monroe County, for instance, or even any place in Western New York, your workforce housing tenants aren't stupid, and they have the financial wherewithal to live wherever they want to in Monroe County. It might not be the Ritz-Carlton, but if you really wanted to put your kids in Pittsford schools and you made, let's say, below the area median income, and let's say you earn like $55,000 a year as a household, you could rent an apartment in Pittsford and send your kids to Pittsford schools.
Yeah.
So my dad taught me one thing, and it really, really stuck with me, is that, son, don't specialize in delivering a product or service that people need. Specialize in delivering a product or service that people want,
Yeah.
because those consumers are discerning. And I want to be working with affluent, discerning customers. Um, and same thing with the tenant base, right?
Yeah.
So, because that thing is like, you can make all the mistakes in the world. If you buy in a good location, like, and you can weather the storm, then it'll cure all the sins that you
Yeah.
committed in your terms of your mistakes. You will make mistakes. So location is definitely going to be really important. So identifying areas where there is some multifamily stock that's in a decent location. So there's plenty in the city of Rochester, for instance, in good zip codes. We don't want to discuss zip codes here to not have to not have an NAR lawsuit, but a HUD lawsuit.
It'll be
Um,
fun.
but yeah, identifying, okay, what are the attractive zip codes? In terms of suburbs, which suburbs actually have like multifamily housing stock?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, you're pretty much safe in all of and I think you don't need to get granular in terms of zip codes and that sort of thing, but But it's like I would definitely focus on that multifamily, especially if you're looking to scale up into, like, let's say, the larger multifamily space, which is what I train people on
Yeah.
how to land their first, like, $1 million plus commercial real estate deal with none of their own money. So that kind of gives you the training wheels of, like, yes, I'm a multifamily investor.
Yeah.
And if you can buy a 2 unit property, why can't you buy a 20 unit property? You can buy a 20 unit property. Why can't you buy a 200 unit property?
That's exactly what I see is like from a mindset standpoint. I've always been, I guess like I've always had a harder, I don't want to say life, but I guess like obstacles than most people. You know what I mean? Like having ADHD, being a refugee, like having English not be my primary language. And I
Mhm.
see individuals with just so much greater success than myself as it is with, I think, just effort, purely
Mhm.
effort and not intelligence. And I'm like, that could be me. Like if this person is buying 100 units, I could buy 100 units.
Mhm.
I just need to figure out how to buy 100 units.
Yeah, so no, and I can definitely, and that's my wheelhouse. All right. So and also the one thing is that and this is a little bit off topic. When you start Googling and educating yourself on YouTube about, oh, how do I buy larger apartment deals or commercial property and that sort of thing, you're going to start seeing the word syndication over and over again.
Yeah.
And I've bought over $16 million worth of real estate and never done a syndication. It is a complete sort of this thing that's been put out there that's like, okay, in order for me to raise capital, I need to be able to syndicate equity.
Yeah.
Um, the reason why you don't need to is because the your first larger scale investment is probably going to be like 99.9% of the capital that you raise for it is probably going to come from friends and family and professional contacts, people that are in your
Really.
sphere of influence. And it's probably going to be less than 10 individuals that participate in this deal. That being said, you do not need to have an SEC regulated offering for a pool of investors that's that small. If you're borrowing 100% of the money, for instance, from friends, family, professional contacts, you don't even have to have an operating agreement for it. Basically, you own 100% of the thing there. You're raising private money. They're loaning to you at, like, let's say 9 or 10% interest. You're paying
Yeah.
them, uh, monthly, or you're accruing it on the back end or whatever. So, your first, and the advantage to doing it that way and not doing a syndication is because, one, once you do a syndication, like I said, if you start off with it, you're going to be, 99% of your money is going to come from friends and family, professional contacts, people you know already.
Yeah.
And you are going to create a lot of work for yourself because there's certain regulatory requirements in terms of reporting to the SEC, post closing, and just all this stuff.
Yeah.
Um, syndications are something that you can, and the cool thing is that when you raise capital from your sphere of influence and you pay them back and you overperform for them, usually the well gets deeper. And then also the 90 to 80% of the people that said no on the first opportunity you brought to them will
Yeah.
say, more of them will say yes the next time. Right.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, I mean, you can completely replace your income and build a baller ass lifestyle for yourself without ever having to do a syndication. But if you want to, like,
Yeah.
bring it to, like, Uber, I want I want to fly a G5, I want to fly private on a G5 and
Yeah.
have a 3 Michelin star chef cook me, golden crusted Wagyu beef tenderloin while I'm there. Like, okay, then you may have to consider the syndication route.
Yeah. Makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I think just from our conversation alone, that's going to be more of, I don't know, like a Q1 Q2 project for 2027, 2026.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like once we have some things under our belts. So even thinking about syndications, thinking about this or that, I'm not necessarily like stressed about it. Would I have loved to purchase something 500 units as my first one, just to be like, hey guys, like, look at this? Sure, but like if that's not the right financial move and there's better just outcomes for me, then that's what I'm gonna do. Because ultimately, like my fundamental goal is just to make money. It's not to piss people off. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? So that's probably something into the future. But for now, as it is, I'm still looking at 1 to 4 units. Because regardless of marketplace, I think objectively speaking, the units themselves are going to be earning income. And that's
Mhm.
all I care about, because even if I live in Ohio, I still technically have 4 units here. Even
Hmm.
if I'm living here and I buy it in Ohio, I still have 4 units that are making me money. So
Hmm.
that's all I'm looking at. It's something that is in a desirable neighborhood that is going to be making me money.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So in terms of like running the numbers and that type of thing on like analysis, so just like you're analyzing it right, so you're actually going to have like a an outcome on the actual investment that is in
Yeah.
line with reality and that sort of thing. What questions do you have on that?
Yeah, I think for me, the biggest question that I have, I'm gonna just backtrack a little bit if that's okay with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, prior to the underwriting and the information piece, I'm more so curious with how you generate potential hand raisers. Because I feel like I could definitely experiment with hundreds of dollars, maybe thousands of dollars a month on advertisements and put money behind Facebook and Meta and all these things. But you've done 16 million, I've done zero. So how are you finding these individuals that you're buying from?
So there's like two different answers, right, in terms of like places and like buckets in my life. So when I was acquiring 2 through 4 unit small multifamily, I was doing direct mail. And I was using a service like List Source, and then I was using a service called Yellow Letter HQ.
Go.
And and I would do direct mail campaigns. Sometimes they would be postcards. Sometimes they would be like a standard, just like white letter. Um, and that's how I got most of my deals. I'd send out 1,000 mailers. I would usually get 3 deals out of it. All right. This is when I was like a deal junkie. Now acquiring commercial real estate, I spent probably $20,000 on direct mail marketing for commercial property. And you know how many deals I got out of it? Zero. It's a completely different game.
Yeah.
So it's very relationship oriented. You have property owners that are more sophisticated, and that's just not the way they sell properties. And so I'm not going to get into that, but that's what I did. List Source, something like that. Prop Stream. There's tons of other services that are out there to really, really, zero in on a prospect list. And I didn't do hyper targeted I didn't do hyper targeted mailing either. I would take zip code, 2 through 4 family. Actually, I think I was doing 2 through 10 or something like that because I did get some like commercial multifamily on there like a 6 unit deal and a mixed use building and that sort of thing. But it was like small. It was like smaller, flying under the radar of like commercial real estate brokers and that sort of thing. So I do that. Is it in an area that I like? Yes. Maybe it's been owned for more than 5 years by the current property owner. And that's all I did. I didn't do like this whole thing where like I'm gonna, one of the things with I think PropStream, for instance, is they have this thing like, you check a box and you go for motivated sellers, tired landlords. I'm like, how do they
How do you
measure
know?
fatigue? I have no idea. So and the one thing is that the direct mail space is competitive, so you're going to have a lot of these other like let's say wholesalers and investors that are trying to use these like I want to target the people that are motivated,
Yeah.
right? And so that's the red ocean. That's the red bloody ocean. I'm just like, well, what about like those other ones that aren't on those lists, right? And just like I'll just blast out an entire couple of zip codes based upon the criteria. And I make it super personable too in terms of the actual the letter. I would basically be like, I get a lot of mail from wholesalers on like the remaining like small multifamily properties that I own, and it's like, you know, no picture of the person. It's like,
We
hey,
buy cash.
yeah, we buy cash, no closing costs, no relator fees. We can close in 30 days. Call Joe at 585, blah, 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 right?
Yeah.
And what I like to do is I just like to do it, short and sweet. Hey, I know this is a shot in the dark. But I'm looking to acquire, to buy my first, or buy a multifamily property that meets your criteria, meets the criteria of the property you own in the next 12 months. Um, if you're interested in the possibility or even a conversation about your property, then give me a call or email me here, right? Um, and that's it. Cell phone number, personal email address. You're gonna have to disclose your licensed real estate agent, of course, on that mail piece, and like another like small disclaimer that if your property is listed with another real estate broker, blah blah
Yeah.
blah blah blah. But just making it super personal, and even put your picture on there. You don't have to have it of you in a suit or anything like that. Just like basically, you're a real, you're a real person. That gets a much higher conversion rate than like the other super professional stuff. People like want to talk to real people, to real
Yeah.
people. So that's how I've been able, I was able to acquire, you know, 76 units that way, 25
Nice.
properties. Took me 11 years doing it, but that's how I was able to do that. So direct mail was definitely one of my things. I'm not a cold caller, so that's just not something that I'm going to do. Um, I think that Facebook ad spend on the thing there. I don't know that. I'm still learning in terms of Facebook ad spend. I'm just trying to like, I know which properties I want to buy in the criteria. Why don't I just like go out to them for something that's super passive that like if it doesn't vibe with them, they can just throw it in the trash. Like big
Yeah.
deal.
That's a good point. We can do another recording about Facebook ads too, so I can work with you on that. It's no problem.
Yeah.
I guess I have a two-part question too. So I think number one, like one of the things that I'm noticing is just as it is right now in today's time frame of July 8th, 2024, interest rates are super high. 99% of individuals are, oh, I'm gonna wait. The market sucks. I can't. It doesn't make sense to buy it. And there's data that shows that it doesn't make sense to buy a property as it is. How would you combat that? And then the second thing that I have is direct mail is getting so expensive now, man. Like the cost of direct mail, it's skyrocketing. And with a lot of the homes being owned by BlackRock, Vanguard, things like that, with entities owning them versus one or two individuals, how are you even squeezing yourself inside of that to potentially have a chance to compete?
Mhm. So I'll address the second question first. So, actually, I mean, okay, so let's do the first question. So, interest rates being high, love that environment. Okay, I'm seeing, especially in income generating property, I love how lazy and greedy investors are. Like, well, interest rates are high, I can't buy the deal. I was like, well, how can I? Um, this is the
No, I like
first,
that.
yeah, so this is the first time in my 18, 19-year career that I've actually been seeing buyers and sellers collaborate with each other to give each other what they want.
Yeah.
This is a prime this is a prime opportunity in terms of market cycle for seller financing, for instance.
Mhm.
On your direct mail piece, for instance, so I'm gonna completely convince you to do this. So on your direct mail piece there is that, if you're interested in, and you're more of a marketing person than I am. So so you can, wordsmith this, but if you're interested in, a solution to delay your capital gains tax, on a sale, I have, I have some solutions or strategies for that, or tactics, or whatever is going to be like,
Yeah.
sort of the lowest common denominator in terms of like language. Um, because this is like one of the things in terms of people that have owned a property for a long time, the thing that scares the living bejesus out of them is capital gains tax. Because a
Oh
lot of
yeah.
them, if they've owned the property for like 20 years, these things get depreciated on a 27 and a half year depreciation schedule. So they own it for 20 years. They've almost depreciated the entire basis of the property to zero. And so they're going to have a huge capital gains tax bill that's going to be due unless you get creative with the financing, right? So it's like if you sold this thing, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, like what would you do with the money, right? Um, and besides, like what's your capital gains tax like strategy in terms of possibly deferring that, right? Because the law of compound interest is like if you can defer that capital gains tax, then it works in your favor. So if they seller finance it, hold a mortgage for you in first position, then they can actually kick the can down the road from capital gains tax standpoint. Now they will pay
Yeah.
capital gains tax based upon whatever you put down on the property. But here's the beautiful thing is that you can by doing the proper discovery process with the property owner is that you can say, hey, the less I put down, the less capital gains tax you're going to have to pay next year on the deal, right? The longer I have interest only and not principal, then the longer we kick the can down the road. Because once they start, once they start amortizing the mortgage, not having an interest only, then it becomes like an installment sale, right? So that portion of principal, that's where they
Yeah.
start paying that incremental capital gains tax on it. Um, so people are a lot more open to that. And when somebody's doing seller finance, like you can come up with a down payment, however, like I've done on a credit card advancement, like credit card advancement. Um, I've done it through pulling from a home equity line of credit. I've done it through various different things, raising private money from individuals, right, for the down payment and closing costs. Banks don't really, aren't that flexible, but a seller could
Yeah.
be. So, just that's just kind of my first response there. I love high interest rate environments for this because some people are just so not creative. Um, so, and then the second part of your question is the Vanguards and the Black Rocks and that sort of thing, like buying everything up. In our market, I'm just not seeing it.
Yeah.
It's a it's definitely there's a small part of the like narrative where that's true, but it's not systemic like you see in secondary and primary markets throughout the United States. So, I mean, I heard that there was like some sort of private equity firm that had BlackRock as an investor that was, that bought like 20 single family houses in the entirety of Monroe County. So,
Yeah.
um, I just don't see it as being pervasive. Um, I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
No, it does.
answer a follow up if you want. The price of direct mail, I think the last time I checked, it was like 56 cents is what one of my clients paid for one of their direct mail campaigns a piece.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it's like spend $500 to hit a thousand, get three deals out of it
Nice ROI.
and add $50,000 to my net worth. I mean, that's a pretty insane ROI. You just
Yeah.
want to make sure that you just want to make sure that it's that what you're doing is effective. And the
Sense.
tips I just gave you is I burned a lot of cash to learn that, and it's very very simple, but just make it personal, and you'll definitely get and then also sending the mail. Here's a super slick trick. Sending the mail in not your standard, I guess I wish I had an envelope around here. I don't. Not your standard envelope there, but like your sort of like your like note thing. It almost looks like a birthday card
Oh, the
invite.
scroll. Yeah. Yeah.
And then it's just basically it's a smaller, like almost like just like it's like a note. They open it up, it's not some huge thing there. So it has a much higher open rate than your standard width like envelope and stuff like
I
that.
love that.
So
That's
yeah.
dope.
Because yeah, open rate's definitely going to be your friend because that's how the entire funnel works, right?
Yeah.
So what else you got for me?
That all makes sense. I guess I have one last question. And that's pertinent to subject two.
Hmm.
Like I'm hearing so much more about it. Buddy of mine just paid like $9,000 to join a course for subject two.
Hmm.
What are your thoughts on just taking over the loan from an individual like that?
Um, so I think, and this has been controversial, I think subject two is going to be illegal at some point in time.
Yeah.
And I know that and I've thrown some shade on our boy like Pace Morby and that sort of thing and his whole sub two program, because I think that it's one of those things that when there's people that start to come to Washington, DC, saying, I got foreclosed on and somebody stole my house from me. All right. you only need to hear a couple of those stories because, like, yes, there are some sub actors in the sub two space, some that are local that are very, very highly ethical, always do the
Yeah.
right thing and that sort of thing. It doesn't matter. It's like when you start getting these unscrupulous people that are out there that start creating these stories and narratives around it, it's going to become illegal. And now you may think like, oh, well, if I did it before it became illegal, like there could still be things where class action lawsuits happen where they're like, hey, if you believe your home equity was stolen from you, here like here's a Lipschitz and Lipschitz, LLP.
Yeah,
I
they're
just
they're doing that with commissions right now.
yeah, yeah. So just to be, just being very careful. But I mean, it is a good way to get into a property with minimal money, minimal money,
Yeah.
down, if not, maybe nothing down. Especially if you're going into a property where property's worth less than what the mortgage balance is in a good location. The only problem is that like is there going to be equity in the backside? A lot of people are getting into subject two with like this sort of like purely cash flow play, and no equity play, right? So it's like
Right.
classic sub two seller, for instance, is has 300,000 owes $300,000 on a house. It's worth $200,000. They can't sell it in the open market, and here you are, you march in, and you deliver the solution. Like, well, I'll take over your monthly payments.
Yeah.
um, there's just not like an equity equation in that. And that's how money is actually made. I mean, money is not made in real estate through cash flow. I can tell you that right now. The money is made on that on the equity, right?
Yeah.
So, but that is a like if you had happened to have somebody respond to you, that hey, I don't know, just in terms of discovery process is that maybe that could be a solution, right? It's
Yeah.
like, hey, we could close right after title is clear, if and I can just take over your payments. One of the things I've seen the more ethical people do is that when they do a sub two and take over the payments, they actually give the former owner a small second mortgage. It could be like $5, okay?
Yeah.
So that they're in a lien position, so that they do have some sort of recourse that if you miss payments, which would be a violation of that second mortgage, for instance, that there's some things that they could trigger to take back the title to the property, so they can start making payments on the property and get the account
Got
brought
it.
back to current. Um, I think it's called a wrap. But I've done subject to in commercial property. I bought our property on 9 Canal Street, and I did get the permission of it was somebody who had a private loan on the property, a private mortgage, and the seller that I contacted on this was like, well, um, I have a private mortgage on this property. I'm willing to give it to you for no cash in, if as long as the mortgage holder is okay with you assuming it and taking it over and releasing me off of it, which they ended up being comfortable doing that. And that's how we acquired
Yeah.
that property, was like kind of
That
like
makes sense.
subject to the current mortgage in place. What I liked about that was that it was a private 20-year mortgage, and it was 10 years in to the amortization. So with every payment we do, we're like kicking the crap out of the principal on it. So it's definitely something I've done on commercial deals before, but I just think that creating a whole system associated with subject to, I just think is very, very risky
That makes sense.
because of the aforementioned things that I just mentioned, right? But if it's a kind of like a tool in your tool belt, you're going through discovery process with the owner of the property, and you're just like, damn, this is not going to work from a traditional sort of like sale standpoint here. Maybe we can make this subject to the current mortgage deal.
That makes sense. Okay, cool. That's things to think about. I think for me, like my primary, um, just from our conversation, it's probably going to be the BRR.
Hmm.
That's how you pronounce it. Um, I just see that being the highest equity standpoint play.
Hmm.
And again, finding those properties are probably, I think that's the most difficult thing. I always tell my clients, lead generation is entrepreneurship, fulfillment is employment, right?
Hmm.
So now that I have props team, I've got list source. I didn't know about those, so I'll take a look at them and then
Hmm.
start messing around with some tools and things like that, and then hopefully start sending out some flyers and see what that results to. Because I mean, I people complain about our taxes in New York, you know what I mean? But again, for me, my only thought is just if I'm making money, like I'm making money,
Mhm.
regardless of marketplace. And then again, I think intuition is something that you can take in any market. So let's say we do decide to make that venture over to Ohio. I still have that intuition. I still have that ability to do what I did here there as well.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Um, what was I going to ask you is in terms of a follow up. Yeah, so there's the yellow letter HQ list source. Also, some actionable types of things you can start doing as well is just so you have this as a tool in your tool belt is finding those, building relationships with and finding what types of products out there for hard money lenders, for
Yeah.
instance. So definitely check out companies that are like Quickline Capital that lend in New York State, what their process is, what their fees are, so you can properly underwrite what that sort of debt service is going to look like on a potential investment property purchase.
Yeah.
Um, and then, just so you kind of have all those things like lined up there so that you're connected with a point of contact to something. You're not like, oh my God, I got this property under contract. You need to close in 2 weeks, and you don't know what their fees are. You don't know what their
Yeah.
process is. It might not be a deal you've been doing. So like put in the work right now to kind of like prime that well is going to be incredibly powerful for you. And
Yeah.
then just I know you want to get in the bigger deal space. I would just focus on taking this, like announcing to the world, hey, we're buying it. I'm buying my first investment property in 12 months, and I'm
Yeah.
here to document the journey for you. I mean, I'm a fan of using video. With that, I know it's uncomfortable for some people. You do it. So, the reason why I prefer
Not well.
yeah, it doesn't matter. I mean, I still suck. I've been doing this I've been doing video, like social media stuff, like short form stuff and long form stuff for 6 years. And I'm still like, dude, I'm not in to be an influencer or anything like that. All I wanted to do is that this is actually my opinion, is I hated being a recipient of direct email marketing. All right.
Yeah.
It's like, God, just more stuff in my inbox. Like, I just want to get stuff that's just the urgent stuff I need to pay attention to. When you think about it, if you're connected to somebody that's in your sphere of influence and an ever expanding sphere of influence online, and they're getting your content distributed to them, then it's very passive. It's just like, oh, here's Gagan again. Oh, I'm kind of interested in investing in real estate. What has he got to say this week, or what has he got to say today, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And they're typically like, as long as you're out there providing value in three forms. The three forms are, if it's not entertaining, educational, or inspirational, it does not belong on your feed. As long as it meets that holy trinity of value, then people aren't going to unfollow you, right? So you start building the audience there. You're indoctrinating them over time that Gagan is a real estate investor, he's good at it. Gagan is a real estate investor, he's good at it. And just developing that mantra over time. Then when it comes to scaling up into a space where you're going to be raising capital and you're reaching out to these people on one, for instance, that it's not coming out of left field, right? So, and then you're gonna be like, yeah, I've been following you for 2 to 3 years, and I've been following your journey, and it just builds that know, like, and trust factor, the
Yeah.
KLT factor with your sphere of influence, and makes capital raising so much easier. That and also check out the video that I have. I called the 1123 method. It's on my YouTube channel. But it using that methodology, and this is battle tested. Using that methodology is how I've been able to raise 1.5, $2 million worth of capital within a week, like
Yeah.
that, right? Didn't start off like that with me before I actually started taking social media seriously as part of it. And I invest heavily in this stuff. Like, I spend $60,000 a year on just my content. So
Yeah.
so definitely, and you don't have to do that right now, but I'm just saying that's like, it's just such a missed opportunity that the people do it. You're already active on it, so why not like bolt this thing on that in terms of your identity?
Yeah. I love that. I think people yeah, people love the delta. They love the shift. My
Mhm.
final question is, are you using any wholesalers to find you any properties?
Because I'm in the commercial deal space, I do network with some wholesalers. I mean, I go to real estate meetups, that sort of thing. I know who the wholesalers are. They know that I buy commercial property.
Gotcha.
and sometimes they come across it. They're out there, they're prospecting, they're making 500 cold calls a week, and they're calling on a 2 unit property, and that owner is like, I don't want to sell that one, but I have a 10 unit like that's on the other side of the town that is like become a huge pain in the ass for me. I would be open to selling that one. Then they know, hey, Matt's the commercial guy. If Matt won't buy it, he's got people that will. Those are my clients that are my program, right? So definitely that's how I work those relationships with wholesalers, is keeping top of mind and having that identity as a commercial real estate buyer. So that's the way I work with them.
Yeah.
With you, yeah, absolutely. It doesn't hurt. Go to meetups, right? We have actually on the second Thursday of every month. We have I don't know if you've been to a FRIA meeting before, Freedom First Real Estate Investors Association. Okay, so with our general meeting, our next one is on the 11th of July. Yeah, 7-Eleven with Josh Briner, and he's a short-term rental, mid-term rental, long-term rental expert. This guy came from absolutely like didn't come from nothing, but came from nothing from like a real estate knowledge and traction standpoint, coming to meetups, and like now he's become like a foremost thought leader
I love that.
in the alternative TR spaces. So he'll have some stuff that'll actually be, I'm gonna get some nuggets out of it, just because he's such a dynamic individual, but also you'll be able to like network and meet other investors and also wholesalers.
Yeah.
They're gonna be in that room, and it's super casual. You don't need to just you can come as you are. If you're a guy that wears a suit if you guys wear the suit every day or something like that, come usually you are. But I mean, there's guys that come in there with like, jeans and and just plastered with paint and stuff like that. It just, it's super casual. But
Yeah.
definitely check that out and make that as a regular occurrence too. The other thing that does as well is that when you're hanging out with other people that are actually doing what you want to do, it becomes sort of this less disassociative,
Yeah.
that becomes more real, because you're like you made this mention a little bit earlier. These people are the same flesh, blood, and bone that I am, and if they can do it, I can do it. And just being in the same room with them it just makes it more real.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. Cool. Cool. That's all I got, Matt.
Okay. All right. Well, sounds good, man. And then yeah, maybe we'll do a part two. And I'm gonna stop recording right now. So peace to everybody that's tuning into this right now. And I'm gonna hop in to the green room with Gagan. Thank you very much for being so transparent with us today.
Thanks, guys.